I wanted to hear about the collection, Wisdom is the Memory Without the Emotion, which you launched your brand with and presented in showroom format at Sarabande Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit about the kind of raison d'etre of this collection?
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with this memory from, I believe, 2005 of being in Caracas, Venezuela, which is where my family is from. Being there for one of my mother's cousin's weddings, one of the many mother's cousins' weddings. And in Caracas, you don't, at least at the time, you wouldn't kind of go buy a dress, you would go have it custom made. And it was very affordable and it was just the done thing. So you'd go and be measured and you'd have the dresses made for you. And I walked in as a maybe 10-year-old and I just thought it was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen in my life. This workshop with all these machines and all these craftspeople. And I think that's the seamstresses could see that I was thrilled, thrilled beyond. So they gave me these kind of 2 massive bags of fabric, like genuinely this big. And you imagine how small I was. My parents actually let me take them back home with us on the plane, which was lovely of them. But then from that point on, I would use those scraps of fabric from La Costurera in Caracas, from the seamstresses, to make kind of small projects to eventually develop into garments or sort of things for soft toys or whatever else. And I'd actually cut these fabrics with my great-grandmother Leia's scissors, because she and her husband had a fabric shop in Venezuela called Almacenes La Selecta. And my mother somehow ended up with these scissors. So I got to use them growing up just to cut my projects and really kind of, at that point, build up a portfolio to go and study fashion. The collection itself looks at these Venezuelan Jewish weddings. And the feeling you have when you're in them, that's this kind of hyper beauty and hyper glamour that's kind of pervasive everywhere. That's a given. That's going to last forever. That's just a truth. And when Venezuela fell into dictatorship, it actually caused a bit of a break, because obviously the families had to, my community, my family's community, the Venezuelan Jews, as well as many, many other Venezuelans had to leave, had to flee. Yeah. And suddenly the community was faced with challenges that it had never dealt with before, it had never faced before. And suddenly people were falling into fears and potentially addictions and just, not so great ways of dealing with challenges. And so effectively this collection, Wisdom is the Memory Without the Emotion, it takes this story, my family story, and it catapults it into London now and contemporary womanhood in London now. And this idea of kind of like constantly running and returning, as a Londoner and as a woman in London. But also as well with my brand's ethos of, contemporary womanhood is elevating pain to wisdom. So it's not a sadness that the collection looks at this memory with. It's actually a real optimism. Yeah. It looks at this break, at this, what's called a tzimtzum in Kabbalah. It looks at this break as actually containing a huge amount of potential for newness. Yeah. And that's sort of where the collection ends up, is this kind of mashing of history with the now in London. I have to discuss Francesco. Without Dr. Francesco Mazzarella, who is actually a principal investigator at Center for Sustainable Fashion on a project called Decolonizing Fashion and Textiles, which I work on. We actually met pretty much as soon as I graduated Central St. Martin's BA Fashion in 2019. And we met, and right away I began a residency with him and created a body of work that kind of slotted into a larger project of his. And since then, he's just been a really, really fabulous mentor. So for this collection, of course, it was, getting finance for it and all these other elements. But we actually designed together an opportunity within my brand for his project participants. So his project, which I'm currently working on, as I sort of said, works with London-based creatives that have either refugee or asylum seeker status, legal status. And it sort of aims to give them creative agency to tell their stories. So it looks at almost cultural sustainability as another pillar of sustainability. The British Fashion Council has, a few different pillars on their Institute of Positive Fashion Forum. It's, a great resource. But we designed a special internship program for his project participants to be able to learn industry skills in an environment that's really sort of set up for them to succeed and takes into account their various needs and barriers. So, Francesco's been absolutely fantastic to me.
Wow, that's great. Can we discuss the shattered glass technique?
Yeah, absolutely. So the shattered glass technique within autumn-winter 2024 is actually in this look. And the technique actually takes a raw material, so normally recycled plastic, and it prints an image on the back of it. And then the entire sheet is sent to a laser cutter, which then will kind of cut the custom sequins. Then the sequins are stitched onto a crinoline or another fabric. So it's almost like a puzzle. Like you're kind of almost hand stitching meticulously this puzzle, which forms this entire image. Normally it's a collage of several different garments. Here it is a collage alongside some sketches over. And this technique is really special to me because I've used it, of course, in my fashion work, but also in my special projects. So for example, within an installation that I did with Jeremy Keenan at Ansoff Gallery in 2022, where we made these kind of broken glass shirts that Jeremy lit really beautifully and made revolve. And they really, for me, kind of draw down this concept in Kabbalah of the tzimtzum, so that breaking for the purpose of creating something in that space that's left behind. So in that context, actually, brokenness is something very beautiful. So this technique for me is really a core technique within my brand and my work.
Something I find really interesting about it is the way that it's this kind of laborious technique to make something which is still like a shadow of something or an imitation that you're talking about, like the sequins. It's kind of quite like an evocative thing about what we leave behind, or I just think it's really, really interesting, beautiful.
Thank you.